We have lots to talk about here in today's video. It's been a very busy news day. Lots of speculation today that the Toronto Maple Leafs are very much interested in Flames defenseman Rasmus Andersson. We'll discuss the possibility of what a trade might look like. Does it make sense? And are the Leafs likely going to try to pull off a move here? Some talk around the Edmonton Oilers and a potential move. Maybe bring back a familiar face. We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we had some big signings today as well, including one with the Sens and Shea Pinto, the Avalanche and Scott Wedgewood. Several key injury updates as well. We have a fine from player safety, a major milestone for Brad Marchand, and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here in today's video, all kinds of NHL news and some interesting trade rumors to take a look at here today. Before we jump into a lot of the other news, I just want to start with the sad news that we got earlier today. Longtime NHL writer, one of the most legendary New York sports personalities from the media side, Larry Brooks, unfortunately passed away today at the age of 75 after a brief battle with cancer, I guess. I didn't even know, was not aware that he was sick or battling this in any way. He really hasn't been that long since we've heard from him with his writing and stuff. So I wasn't really aware of that. But of course, like I said, he's been at this a long time. He did work for the New Jersey Devils in their PR department for a while before becoming a sports writer for the New York Post. Of course, he spent a lot of time there. Quite famous for a lot of his not only his stories, but interactions. I know, thinking back to the John Tortorella era of him coaching the New York Rangers and the battles that they would have and the interactions during post-game interviews and stuff like that, certainly were quite famous and legendary in their own right. I know some people didn't always like Larry's stories or whatnot, but he got a lot of good scoops. He's been around the game a long time, and no matter what you thought of his writing, I thought he was an important piece of the media landscape there in New York. So certainly want to pass along our condolences to his friends and family. I know Molly Walker, his co-worker with the Post there, put quite a heartfelt tribute to him today. He played a big role in mentoring her as she got started in her career, fairly young as well, getting into covering the New York area sports. So certainly sad news on the front of Larry Brooks. Big news as well out of Toronto today. We have news from the waiver wire. David Kampf is finally getting a resolution to the, I guess, want to call it a dispute or the difference of opinions or whatever between him and the Toronto Maple Leafs. Of course, David Kampf was on unconditional waivers today for the purpose of contract termination. So David Kampf is walking away from almost $4 million in actual real dollars. Kampf had signed a 4-year contract. He still has this year and another year left on that deal. Was put through waivers and sent to the AHL's Toronto Marlies as the season was getting ready to begin. And he's been down there. He played for a while, but eventually never got recalled and just didn't really think he needed to be there. And eventually, almost a week ago, decided to take a leave from the team. Because he took a leave, he ended up getting suspended because it wasn't an authorized leave. And he and his agent basically said to the Leafs that we need to get a resolution here. Either trade me or consider a termination or something, and that's the road to end up going down. I think a lot of teams were interested in signing him or maybe trading for him, but the big issue was that second year. I think if he just had this year left, it would have been a little bit easier. So tomorrow afternoon, he should become a free agent, and I would suspect that either tomorrow or over the weekend, we'll hear about him signing a new contract with another team. The belief is he'll get a 1 or 2 year deal with another club, probably making less money, but all in all, he's not going to end up losing too much, I don't think, by the time it's all said and done and he ends up on a new spot with a new team. So we'll see where Kampf ends up. Other news from the waiver wire today, goaltender Spencer Martin, who recently signed with the Rangers, and Justin Kirkland of the Calgary Flames both cleared so they can be reassigned down to the minor leagues today. Also an update from the Department of Players Safety. Devils defenseman Brendan Dillon's been slapped with a $5,000 fine for boarding against Chicago Blackhawks forward Tyler Bertuzzi for last night's game as well. A couple of big signings today. The Ottawa Senators come to terms with Shea Pinto on a 4-year contract extension. This has been dragged out for some time. Of course, they started negotiating in the summertime when he was first eligible. There was reports that Pinto was being offered somewhere around $5.5 to $6 million by the Sens on a mid to long-term deal. Sounds like they talked about terms anywhere from like 4 to 8 years. And of course, that wasn't going to get it done. We knew that wouldn't get it done. Teams usually always start in lower, trying to kind of hope for something very team-friendly, and it didn't work out that way. Then we had heard back, I think it was maybe two weeks ago or so, that they had brought their offer up to about $6.5 million. I was like, they're going to have to go higher because he's going to see himself basically in between Dylan Cousins and Tim Stützle, using the other team Senators, centermen on the Senators as comparables. And that's exactly where things landed, right between the two guys. $7.5 million for a guy that's going to give you 20 to 30 goals and be a really solid 200-foot centerman who can play against the other team's top players. Pretty good value. So overall, I think it's a fair contract that he's going to grow into easily. Of course, he came together. He just had his birthday and came back in the lineup tonight after having a bit of a dry spell with goals, at least. He started scoring. I think it was 8 goals in his first 7 or 8 games, and then he's kind of cooled off. He's been getting some more assists, though, so it's not like he hasn't been producing, but it's been a while since he scored, and he scored tonight right after signing the contract. Had his birthday yesterday, so Shea Pinto's having himself a pretty good week. $30 million in total, and then a nice goal tonight, big win against the Bruins, and a 25-year birthday yesterday. The other signing we got today was the Colorado Avalanche signing goaltender Scott Wedgewood, who they had picked up from Dallas earlier. He gets a 1-year extension at $2.5 million. Pretty fair contract. Wedgewood's played quite well for them this year. I wouldn't be surprised if he at least gets some consideration for the number 3 goalie spot on the Canadian Olympic team. I no guarantee he gets there, but I mean, looking at the other Canadian goaltenders, Sam Montembeault is struggling in Montreal this year. Aiden Hill's been injured. I think Binnington, regardless of his regular season numbers, because of his Four Nations performance, will be one of the 3. But if Hill and Montembeault are not in the mix, besides Wedgewood, you got maybe like a Darcy Kemper in LA could be in the mix. And there's not really a lot of other guys that are really, playing a lot. So, Wedgewood could find his way into that conversation. Whether or not he gets there, I don't know. But I think he'll at least be considered. Pretty good goaltender overall. Some injury updates and roster moves around the NHL here today. The Anaheim Ducks, of course, were playing tonight. Ryan Strome set to make his season debut. Of course, Strome was hurt in the preseason, missed the first number of games here, is ready to finally go, so he's in their lineup tonight. Mikhail Granlund returns to the lineup tonight as well. Fortunately for the Ducks, though, they did lose to the Red Wings. Radko Gudas also was added to the injured reserve. I think that happened a day or two ago, but he's out for a little while. San Jose have recalled goaltender Jakub Skarek. The Blue Jackets confirmed as well today, something that we weren't aware of. Their game tonight was against the Edmonton Oilers. The previous game, Kent Johnson was out of the lineup, and the belief was that he was sick. That was not the case. He was actually a healthy scratch. Dean Evison did confirm that in the pregame media availability today. He was back into the lineup. Blue Jackets picked up a nail-biter 5-4 victory over the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers continue to kind of sputter here as well. Just like the last number of games that we've seen, they got behind. They clawed back, made it interesting, but ultimately fell short. The Maple Leafs lost against the Los Angeles Kings tonight in overtime. So at least they got a point out of it, but they did not have a great game. They didn't generate a lot of shots, didn't generate a lot of offense. Matthews is out. They said his prognosis is about at least a week. Scott Lawton's back to IR. Of course, he only came back, played a short stretch, and he's back out after taking a big hit, got hurt again. Easton Cowan was not in the lineup tonight as well, and I believe the main reason was they didn't have the cap space to be able to call him up. They also had Anthony Stolarz out. They had to recall goaltender Artur Akhtiamov as well from the American Hockey League because Joseph Wall wasn't quite ready to jump back to the NHL lineup yet. So they're definitely a walking wounded team here and kind of sputtering with their play. So obviously they're going to be looking for some improvements. We're going to talk about the Leafs here and what they might be up to in just a few minutes. The Vegas Golden Knights have recalled Braden Bowman, he's been recalled because William Karlsson will be out for an extended time. He's out week to week, so probably looking at least a couple of weeks there for him. The Calgary Flames have recalled forward Rory Cairns. The Avalanche recalled Cale's brother Taylor McCarr. The Winnipeg Jets are getting back Dylan Sandberg tonight. He's ready to make his season debut as the Winnipeg Jets are in action this evening. And for the Edmonton Oilers, Zach Hyman didn't play tonight, but he is expected to play in the next 1 or 2 games. So by the end of the weekend, the hope is that will either be in the lineup or maybe the next game after. So Zach Hyman is super close to being able to return, which means we could see a corresponding move as well to make room on that roster and cap space to make that happen. The other big milestone we got tonight is Brad Marchand, the ageless wonder. He never seems to be slowing down here. Got point number 1,000 on an empty net goal. He picked up an assist. The bench cleared. Big celebration, rightfully so. Marchand's a player that probably had odds stacked against him, to be honest, early on. He's an undersized player, but had to find a way to contribute and get into that Bruins lineup early in his career, and he did that. And then he just kept developing. He's had some great trainers over the years. That Nova Scotia group that trains together in the summer a lot between him and Crosby and Batherson and a few others. Like, they really have some top-notch trainers, and Marchand is, like Crosby, he's been able to age like a fine wine and has kept himself in good shape. And is, like I said, he signed a 6-year contract in his late 30s, which was crazy. And I think that to a degree that's, some people call it cap circumvention, and it makes you wonder, but he doesn't show any signs, at least right now, of slowing down. So, Marshy's still plugging away strong here. So 1,000 points for the player they used to call the little ball of hate, who's just nothing but produce. And really, Florida hasn't had the greatest start to the season considering all their injuries. But the reason that they're not doing worse and are really out of it, he's been by far, I think, their best, most consistent player. So Marchand's been an absolute godsend for them since he's arrived there. I don't think they win the Stanley Cup without him last year, and I don't think they're where they are in the standings. They're not like super high in the standings. They're still, a lot of teams ahead of them, but I think they're further out of it if it's not for his contribution. So good on him. Congratulations on a phenomenal milestone with 1,000 points. Now, I saw some speculation. We know the Oilers, they're sputtering along, not doing great. There's the times you kind of question even the energy level, the effort level. I don't know what's going on there. And even not so much tonight, but the last game the Oilers played against them as well. To me, like, watching Edmonton play lately, I think I've seen Connor McDavid get manhandled a lot. A lot of big hits again, and it's not much of a response. So I've seen some speculation that maybe the Oilers might be looking in and trying to figure out if there's a way to get Evander Kane back. That things haven't really worked out great for him in Vancouver, and maybe they're having second thoughts there. I don't know that they're going to be able to pull it off, to be honest. I mean, from a cap perspective, I just don't know how they could make it work, considering what else they need to work on here within that team. But I did see some speculation, wondering, needing a physical player, a response, is there some way they could look into that for later in the year? I'm not sure, but if it's not Kane, that type of player to come in and kind of help, might not be a terrible idea. At the same time, they got to address goaltending. They could use some help on defense. So, there's a lot going on with Edmonton, which is kind of tricky and hard to say what they're going to be able to do. Now, as I mentioned, a bunch of speculation around the Leafs. Things kind of get started today with former player and now podcaster Jay Rosehill mentioned this first, but then I've seen comments from guys like Chris Johnson and Elliot Friedman that say, you know what, I don't think Rosie's not wrong here. But the Leafs, according to them, very, very interested in Rasmus Andersson in Calgary. Now, I'm not sure that Rasmus Andersson is going to be the answer to all their problems. Good defenseman, but I mean, I don't know. I'm not really sure that he's going to come in and fix everything. The thing with the Leafs blue line, I think this is pretty. I think most people would agree. They focus so much on having the size, the strength, the beef, the hitting, that they lost enough speed and ability to move the puck. They have a lot of physicality back there. They just don't have much in the way of puck moving and offensive instincts. So that is problematic. But I mean, really, like I said, it's really also a combination of their ability to properly defend too, because they're scoring at a good clip. It's not so much the issue. it's the keeping the puck out of their net that's been the problem. They're getting subpar goaltending and subpar defending to start the year. Some people are pointing the finger at Derek Lalonde and the fact they have a new D coach. Maybe they're doing things differently. But whatever it is, they do need to find a way to get things fixed. And you can tell Craig Berube is obviously irritated a lot lately, and rightfully so. But Elliot Friedman made it known, which we kind of already heard about before, but the Leafs were interested in Rasmus Andersson at the trade deadline last year. Now, Brad Treliving, being the former GM of the Flames, had a lot of interest in some of those players to bring to Toronto. And it seemed like Craig Conroy didn't really want to do that. That if he was going to deal with his old pal Brad in Toronto, that he was going to basically make him overpay. That they had to offer way more than everybody else to get a deal done. And that's probably why we haven't seen one. Obviously, Chris Tanev ended up there as a free agent, but, he ended up getting traded to Dallas first. So, we know Brad Treliving built that blue line in Calgary. And as much as the team didn't have great success, the blue line was one of their strengths. So to hear that he's interested in bringing in an old defenseman from Calgary, not shocking in the least. Chris Johnson also mentioned the same sort of thing, that, to maybe get more of a puck-moving defenseman. And really, we know now the thing with Andersson, he's on an expiring contract. So for them, he's not going to come cheap, especially where they have to pay the Brad Treliving tax if they're going to have any chance of getting a deal done with Conroy in Calgary. So ultimately here, they need to make sure he sticks around. So unless they can talk to him about a contract extension, it's not worth it. But a lot of people speculating, what would it take? Because we don't even know. All we've mainly heard about Andersson is he's mostly interested in signing a long-term extension with either Vegas or Dallas. Now, would he go to Toronto? I don't know. Because if he won't, then it doesn't really matter anyway. But ultimately, Brandon Carlo appears to be the name we've heard a lot about. Now, besides other insiders, Dave Paynoda has also weighed in, not so much talking about Andersson, but talking about Carlo, saying that if the Leafs do want to make a trade, it's probably going to have to be a more of a hockey trade where at least one decent size or significant salary comes off the books to bring another one in. And that a guy like Carlo might end up being what you'd call like a cap casualty in order to be moved to bring in a different type of player. I think it's fair to say, based on what we heard, it sure sounds like the Leafs have had some buyer's remorse on that Carlo trade. It hasn't quite worked out. Not quite to the player that they thought they were getting. So ultimately, could they package Carlo with a couple of other assets to bring in Rasmus Andersson? Now, the belief was, I've seen one of the trade offers being speculated by some of these media people and other fans on social media was Carlo, Nick Robertson, and maybe like a second. They don't have a lot of draft picks, so it'd have to be a second-round pick a couple years down the road. Nick Robertson, good young winger, still trying to establish himself and be a consistent goal scorer. And obviously, Carlo's a right-shot defenseman like Andersson, a little bit more term on his contract, so he could stick around a little bit longer. Is that a deal that Conroy would accept? I mean, most people would generally, I think that I've seen talking about this between media and fans, we're all in agreement that they really should avoid trading Easton Cowan and Ben Danford, given that they don't really have much in the way of prospects. Outside of them, there's not much there that's guaranteed to really play NHL games or higher end stuff. And they don't have a first round pick for a couple of years, so they probably shouldn't trade another one. So those are the assets you really got to avoid moving if you can help it. So Carlo would be the main player on the blue line they would move. A young player like Robertson makes sense. He's been in the rumor mill forever and a day. And then, maybe like a second or third round pick a couple years down the road. Would that be enough to get Rasmus Andersson out of Calgary into Toronto? I don't know. But I mean, that would, if I'm Brad Treliving, I'm probably not offering any really more than that. I mean, if you talk to, you're allowed to speak to the player or the agent and get a long-term extension in place, maybe there's a little something more in there, but not much. You have to be reasonable and see. Obviously, Rasmus Andersson's a player that, maybe if they wait to the deadline, they might be able to fetch more, get teams a little bit more desperate. But I think it's fair to say that the Leafs right now are feeling that sort of pressure early. So they're going to, obviously, by the sounds of things, trying to get ahead of things and try to shake things up before it gets too late into the year one, you get a longer time and easier time to integrate that person into your mix before you have a chance to get to the playoffs, and you have to make sure you make it to the playoffs, right, to have a shot. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, now they're banged up on top of things, plus a struggling decor. The goaltenders, like I said, have had issues. Like, there's a lot going on in Toronto. We've heard some chatter about Craig Berube. Is Berube safe? Are they going to understand that this is more of a player personnel? Like, look at the coaches they've been through. I don't think it's a coaching problem. I see some people suggesting Pete DeBoer coming in for Berube. I mean, he's out there. I mean, if they did make a change, I could see them going to him. But is that really going to make a difference if the roster has not changed much? Like, look at the guys that have been there the longest. They have had Mike Babcock. They've had Sheldon Keefe. They've had Craig Berube. What's it going to take? It's going to take them to really play the way they need to play and get the results. I don't think it's a coaching issue. I think Berube's a great coach. But sometimes even great coaches can struggle to get the most out of certain players. So we'll see what happens. Like, to some degree, I think it is a roster construction issue. But it's also a player performing, at their capability issue too. So we'll see what happens. But Rasmus Andersson heavily linked to Toronto. Let me know if you think that's the move that they need to make. Would it shake things up enough to ignite the team to get on a better run? Would it fix the defense? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.